So today we're going to have Sarah Craig from Great Lakes Law discussing what legal needs have to be considered for starting up. We'll also do a brief presentation about insurance, and we will tie up the last few documents that you have for your business plan that's required for the competition. In the meantime, Sarah, it's all yours. Thank you for joining us this evening.
No problem at all. My pleasure. Thanks for having me. So I'm Sarah. For anyone who doesn't know me, I work as a lawyer at Great Lakes Law. My employer is Chelsea Cooper. You probably, if you haven't heard my name, you've most likely heard hers because she's a superstar in the legal community. So I'm her associate lawyer, and she is disappointed that she couldn't be here today. She's actually in California. So that's fun for her, but I just wanted to give a little background on who I am. I've been practicing for about 5 years now, and actually Great Lakes Law has existed for about that same amount of time. I was at a different office for about 3 to 4 years, and then joined up with Chelsea, and she originally was Chelsea Cooper Professional Corporation and moved over to Great Lakes Law, which was always the same company, but she just changed the name of it to kind of rebrand everything when I joined with her so that it reflects both of us, which is amazing. So yeah, that's me. So I usually find in conversations like this that questions is where we really get to the root of what everyone's wanting to know, and that helps you learn in the best way. So if you do have any questions, anything that you're wondering about, I'm an open book. Just let me know, and I'm happy to go over anything. I do a lot better in just a conversational type situation where we can just talk things out and make sure you're getting the information that you really want and need. So basically, when you're creating a business, there's so many things that you need to think of in terms of the legal requirements. It's starting a business, operating a business, and if that happens, wrapping a business up, you should always be thinking of the legal requirements. So basically, when you're starting it, so as this list indicates, the typical areas that you need to worry about are the business structure. So how are you going to be structuring your business? We will get into this a little bit later on, but for example, is it going to be a sole proprietorship, a corporation, a partnership, a limited liability company, or something of the like? Which one fits best for what your business plan is? And that's something that I'll go into more detail about. And I think that you guys have already discussed that at least a bit, but that the presentation kind of indicates back in a different module. So we'll go over any gaps that you might have had in that and just kind of recap that. So that's what we're focusing on for business structure. For advertising and promotion, you want to make sure that number one, any of your, this one I find overlaps a bit with intellectual property. So you want to make sure that any of your advertising is complying with anyone else's intellectual property needs, and also that your advertising is compliant with any advertising rules, but also that your advertisement is protected against someone else, stealing your ideas. When you advertise, you're putting out your brand and like your logos and your photos and all of that sort of thing into usually now just onto the internet and onto social media and that sort of thing. And that's a place that's easy for things to get taken from you or misused, misappropriated, or anything like that. So that's something to consider as well. You also want to make sure that if you have to have any legal disclaimers in your advertising, that those are included. The biggest example that I can think of is if you are a corporation, you would want to indicate your corporate legal name. So if, for example, anytime you have incorporated, you have to have a legal ending to that, which would be when you see at the end of a company name where it says corporation, co, limited, LTD, incorporated, or Inc. You would want to make sure that that's included in your advertising. Same with LLC if it's a limited liability corporation, so that whoever you're advertising to and whoever you're promoting to knows that that's your business structure. You just have to make them aware of that, even if it is in the tiny fine print. But that's something that a lawyer can help you look at. And if you're aware of it ahead of time, then you know that needs to be included. For credit and personal guarantees, this is something that this is basically where if you are operating your business where you and your personal assets come into play. So you would want to look at what your own credit looks like, because that often affects your business lending ability, which Jennifer would have more of a take on that than I do for sure. But basically, in terms of legalities, you would want to make sure that if you were putting a personal guarantee on anything, or getting a business loan in your own name, or in order for you to start the business, or if it was a sole proprietorship and that was where you were getting your business from. Sorry if that's where you were getting your business name from, loan from. Sorry, it's been a long day.
It's okay. We all feel it.
If that's where you're getting your business loan from, basically basing it out of the sole proprietorship rather than the corporation, then basically if you were to default on any of your loan obligations or anything like that, then any of you're personally guaranteeing it, which does happen sometimes with corporations too. It depends on what the requirements of the loan are. But when you're putting your own personal name on it, then obviously you have to have a certain credit ability for lenders to agree to lend to you. And then also, if you were to default on any payment, then that puts your own personal assets subject to being foreclosed upon by any lender. You also want to make sure all of your contracts are in place. So there's really a lot of types of contracts that you want to think of. So it's indicated here, sales contracts. So that would be if you're providing a service, you would want to have a service contract in place where the person that you're providing the service to knows exactly what their obligations are. You know exactly what your obligations are. And this goes from the beginning of the relationship, all of the obligations through to the end of the relationship. And you do want to make sure that there is a clear ending as well. That's something that a lot of people don't think of. My job as the lawyer is to think of the worst case scenario always. So
true.
Those are the types of things that I'm thinking of, that most people are more optimistic and they think, oh, everything's going to be great, so we just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. But I'm saying, okay, what happens if your relationship sours, and we need to fill in the gaps for what you need to cover for that. And we'll go into more detail about what a contract should have in it. So those would be service contracts. Same things for sales. So if you're providing a product, then you would want the same type of, it's very similar, the type of contract that you would have, but obviously it would be for a product rather than for a service. One thing that's kind of been new in our field, that is a bonus, that both Chelsea and myself are younger, so we understand more technology than some of the older lawyers, is that a lot of services that people are providing are more like, I'm thinking in terms of like being an influencer or something like that. Like you can have your own just filming your life or something like that, or creating digital content can be a service that you're providing, and that creates sort of a unique ability for us to put those items into your contract. So that's really where you would want your intellectual property to be protected, because yourself is a brand, and that's something. So it's really good to have a contract that is specifically tailored to your needs, specifically for your business, so that you know that all of those things are being covered. So for example, how do you govern a website when it's not just available in Canada? So it's not just the jurisdictional considerations of Canada, but the whole World Wide Web, as they say. So that's something to think of. Other contracts that you would think of would be if you were leasing property, like a storefront for your business, or a whole building, or even just a room in a building, then you would want that's a contract, your lease agreement, that you would want to make sure is in place and ready for you to start operating there. Because what if someone trips and falls in your store or something like that? What happens then? Who's responsible for that? So all of those types of things. Employment contracts, which is something that we'll go into more detail for that. And that's for independent contractors, employees, or agents, or any combination thereof. And yeah, as well as any contracts for your suppliers. So if you are providing a product, then you would want to make sure that you and your suppliers also have a contract, so that same thing, if a relationship sours, then what would happen then? There was one that just came into my mind, and it totally just escaped me. For I forget now, but those are the major ones. Sorry, if it comes back to me, I'll circle back. But then you would also want to disclose or follow any of the rules in terms of pricing disclosure. So I'll just give the example of my legislative body. So we have to comply with any of the Law Society regulations. And we have a rule that says that if someone asks for a breakdown of our costs, so if they need a quote on fees, that we actually have to break it down. Sorry if you hear squeaking, my dog is right next to me. He just grabbed a toy. Sorry about that. So yes, if you need to, so if someone asks us for a service and they want to quote on our fees, then it has to be broken down item by item, so that you know that everything is listed for them. And there are other professions or other areas of work that you would have the same requirements. Same thing for if you're being sponsored by someone or something. I know that there's rules associated with that, where you have to disclose that you're being sponsored by that organization, things like that. So that's something that you would want to that you would want to consider as well. And you would want to think about basically how, like, what your pricing structure is as well. If you do get inquiries about what your prices are, what your tax breakdown is, so whether HST is applicable, all of that sort of thing. And then I already touched on this a little bit, and we'll go into more detail on this, but personnel. So whether the people that are working for you are independent contractors, employees, and agents, and we'll circle back to what those relationships look like as well. Record keeping and reporting. This is a big one, especially for corporations. There is legislation in place that says that you have to keep your corporate books up to date, which a lot of people are not aware of at all. We as when I say we as in lawyers, I mean all of us, not just our office. We keep any of our corporate clients' minute books, is what they're called, their corporate book, up to date for them. So no one even knows that it's really happening. We just do it for them. But it is something that any changes in the company needs to be filed in this book. It needs to be kept in a safe place, so that if they were ever audited or anything like that by the ministry, that it's all there for them. And there can be penalties if things aren't kept up to date. Same with reporting. So the thing that comes to mind most frequently for me here is making sure that your business registration is up to date and that you have renewed it when you need to. That goes for filing annual returns for corporations, or making sure your business name for a sole proprietorship or registered partnership is up to date as well. For intellectual property, this is something that I've mentioned a few times, but you really just want to make sure that your ideas and your content that you're putting out are kept safe, and that no one is questioning your ownership of it, and that if they are, they're not able to take that away from you. You want to make sure that you are also respecting other people's intellectual property rights. And we'll go into more detail about what that looks like as well. Three major jurisdictions that you want to consider when you're thinking of whether you're following the specific rules. Obviously, federal, provincial, and municipal are those. So federal governs federal companies. So it could be one that's operating nationwide. So if you have multiple locations, or if it's something more like an IT provider or something, that you would not just be operating in one place, but you're physically in Ontario, say, but providing a service in a different province, so you would want to follow any federal legislation then. Provincial legislation is obvious. You would want to make sure that any requirements you have for that. So there are statutes for corporations, for partnerships, and for sole proprietorships. So you want to make sure that you're complying with that. And they go into detail about what the structure needs to look like, what registrations need to be made, what your whether there can be, you know, private shares or public shares held, what your directors and officers' roles are, if it's a corporation, all of that sort of thing. What your record keeping responsibilities are. That's where you would find that most likely in the provincial legislation. Municipal is more looking at bylaws and making sure that any type of business that you're running is complying with any bylaw, and that can be whether your business needs to be registered municipally, whether the type of business, like I'm thinking in terms of zoning. So if you're operating in a specific location, whether you're able to in that place, if it's zoned the proper designation. So those are the types of things that you want to consider. Another thing that pops into mind in terms of where else legal requirements come into play, and this is just because I have a regulating body, any other sort of professions or specific niches of types of businesses. I'm thinking like an electrician or a plumber or a doctor or something like that. You have a governing body that tells you what you can and can't do as well, what types of business you can operate, and what types of names you can have as well for your business. So sometimes, like I said, the example that I use always is that our business is legally known as Chelsea Cooper Professional Corporation, because any professional corporation for law purposes has to have at least one lawyer's name in the business name. So we're just operating as Great Lakes Law, but our actual legal name is Chelsea Cooper Professional Corporation because she's a licensed individual, so her name has to be there. So then the main questions you want to think of when you're creating a business plan is, have all of your legal requirements been investigated? So have you thought of all of the things that we have talked about and all of the things that we will be talking about today? Has the legal structure for the business been determined? Have the relevant licenses, permits, registrations been researched? Which I could name some that are applicable if someone gave me a specific circumstance, but you definitely, that's something that you would really want to research because it's very specific to an individual's position with their business. Have relevant taxes been considered? So I guess that would be HST and that type of thing. If you're buying land, there's land transfer tax, all of that sort of thing. Have you ensured agreements are in writing and being reviewed by a respective lawyer? So those would be all of the contracts that we talked about. Have you had a lawyer review them? Just from a lawyer's perspective, we kind of give you two options, and this is most lawyers do this, where you can write an agreement and have a lawyer review it, or you can have a lawyer draft it. It's going to be more expensive for a lawyer to draft it just because they, you know, start from scratch and they don't know your business as well as you do, so it takes them more time. But if you have one existing and you need a lawyer to review it, then that's something that they can do as well. So they would just provide comments and suggested edits and that sort of thing, so that you could see where any gaps in your contracts are. That's something I do quite frequently, and sometimes it's very spur of the moment, like, oh, I got this contract that a client wants me to sign, but I'm just not quite sure. Can you take a look at it? And I need it by tomorrow. So we're very used to that type of thing. That's not an unusual ask of basically probably any lawyer in Sarnia could look at it for that type of purpose. Most lawyers practice business law here. Any of the ones that do real estate usually do business law as well. Has intellectual property protection been obtained if necessary? So this would really be making sure that you have registrations on any of your personal ideas and that type of thing, or your logos, trade names. So we do what's called, I don't even know what the acronym stands for. I'm so sorry, but it's called a nuance search. It's NUANS. And what that does is it comes up, we search a business, proposed business name. So you tell us what you would like your business to be, and we search it. And then it has a database of all of the registrations of that business name or a similar business name, so that you can decide whether it's something that you would be infringing on someone else's business name registration, or whether it's free and clear and you're okay to register it that way. It also reserves the business name. So, and this is something that you can do yourselves too. It's just part of our process when we're creating a new business. So, it reserves the business name for 90 days. So that means that no one else can swoop in and use the business name during that 90 days. So you have the 90-day period to register it, to make sure that it's yours and that no one else will be using it. If you wanted to have trademark protection on your business name or logo, or even just an idea or anything like that, that is a much bigger process. In order for a lawyer to do it for you, they have to be a registered trademark agent, which I unfortunately am not, though I would like to become one. We can guide you on how to register a trademark, because you can do it yourself, but we just can't do it for you, and it takes a long time. We've done a couple, and for it to come back as registered, it usually takes over a year. So it is a lot more difficult, but just think of it in terms of that you don't necessarily lose you by filing a trademark. It's more just like strict evidence that you for sure have the intellectual property rights to this item. So we'll just say item, but that it could be anything from name, logo, ideas, pictures, anything like that. You can still have protections. So for example, you can have a watermark on any photos that you use. You can have on your website a disclaimer. You know how when you go on a website, you can see there's like a legal section, and it would say in there that nobody else has the right to use any of the images or logos or business name or anything that's on this website. Same within your contract. You would put in a section on who has the intellectual property rights to any of your services or your product that you're providing. So for example, if you're, say your, I'm just trying to think of an example where we would have this in it. So say your business that you're creating was to create websites for somebody. So you would have to have the discussion with the client whether the intellectual property rights from the actual website belong to you as the creator of the website or the client, the user of the website. And that can often be a pretty intense conversation, because the people that are using the website are thinking, well, I want to be able to make changes to it as I can because it's my website. But then the person that created it is like, this is a product that I've given you. It's an art form in a way. Do I want someone tinkering with it and making changes to it? So that's something that you would also negotiate and decide who has the right to change it and use it. And does some people have a limited use of it? So do you want to put limits on that? So that's really important to put into contracts, or even just have a notation on a website or anything like that. Okay. Have you classified your workers? So are they employees or independent contractors? I think this goes into more detail on a different slide, so I won't go in too much into that. But we'll discuss that. Okay, perfect. Do you have insurance to mitigate risk? This is a big one. I often advise clients when I'm reviewing agreements to make sure that your contracts have a section about insurance in them. That's one of the main 3 things that I ask them to put in. Who has to have insurance, and if both of you have to have insurance. So if a service provider and someone who's receiving a service are entering into a contract, do both of them need to have insurance coverage, and do they need to show it to each other? All of that sort of thing, because you do want to make sure that you're covered for all aspects. So like I said, I'm always thinking of worst case scenario, even if it's just something as simple as someone's in your store, they trip and fall and they get hurt. Or it could be your a chiropractor and you crack someone's back and it breaks something, who's responsible? Do you have insurance to cover that? So it could be just a tiny little thing, or it could be like a huge scary deal. If there's a fire or something like that and all of your product is gone, what happens then? Do you have to just start from scratch, or do you have insurance to cover that? So there's lots of different aspects for that. I'm not an expert on insurance, but I've seen some horror stories. So that's really the best perspective that I can give. And then, have you registered for workers' compensation insurance? That's something that an insurance person can help you with, again, better than I can. But that is definitely something that you would want, especially once you reach a threshold of a certain number of employees. The more employees you have, the more important it is, because the more likely that someone's going to get hurt or have some sort of accident. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So for the legal requirements, you want to identify legal risks. This is something that I focus on a day-to-day basis. My job is to point out risks, but you do want to be aware of them yourself so that you're not just naively operating a business and not thinking of what any of your risks are. So you want to basically just take a step back and look at every aspect of the business and where your risks are. So whether it's relationships between your business and other businesses, or your business and whoever your client or customer base is, you want to think about your daily operations and how those are affected with any risks or anything like that. It does, like it says here, vary a lot from business to business in terms of what specifically you're going to identify as an illegal risk. So for some, it might be that your risks are safety to people because you're providing a medical service or something like that, or you're providing a product that, could have an ingredient that maybe isn't so good for other people, or it's something that you're putting your own liability out there. So you're like, for me, the biggest thing, I'm providing a legal opinion. What if my opinion is incorrect? Then that would be a risk, right? What do I have to cover myself in case I give someone the wrong advice or something like that? Or even if someone just tries to blame you for doing something wrong, what happens then? So you want to think of basically every aspect, which I know sounds kind of daunting. And that's why getting a lawyer to look at your business structure is a good idea, or even just having a second set of eyes look at everything to say, do you see any gaps in this? Where could we go wrong, and where do we need more coverage? Where is it okay to kind of let some go and have that, pro-con analysis where should I let this risk go because the reward is much higher or something like that? Okay. I think we can go on to the next one. Okay. So then you want to evaluate. Okay, so I was kind of going into this already, but basically there are some huge risks, there are some smaller risks, and you do want to do that analysis to see which ones you're willing to accept and which ones you have to be addressed. And then there's going to be some that are in between too, where you're kind of on the fence, and maybe some of them have an easier solution than others, or an easier way to solve the problem, or maybe some it's really expensive to solve the problem. So you want to shelf it and basically make a note of it, put a pin in it until the business is bigger and that sort of thing, which is definitely something that can be done. So you do have to have that internal analysis where you're deciding where the risk is, and then how can I deal with it? Is it too big of a deal to deal with? And it's not going to be a huge risk for me, so I'm willing to just let it go. And so on to the third step, devise a legal risk management plan that's developed based on the resources and needs of the business. So like I said, you want to see what steps you need to take in order to eliminate the risk. So if it's something that's super risky, then you probably don't want to do it at all, because you know that the risk is there. You know that it's likely that you're going to have some sort of damage come out of it. whenever through your business that would happen. So you might want to eliminate it altogether. You could reduce the risk by, having a contract, like an indemnity waiver of liability or anything like that, that have people sign off on the risk or something like that, so that it's reduced. That doesn't necessarily stop people from suing you, because you'll learn if you ever become a lawyer that people always have the chance of being sued, but it will help in your favor if that does occur. Or you could transfer the risk. So if you do a contract with someone, then you're putting the responsibility on someone else. Kind of like I said, where intellectual property, you would decide who's responsible for what and who owns what, that sort of thing. So you would make sure that it's clear whose responsibility it is to deal with that risk should it arise. Or you could make sure you have insurance coverage, so that even if something were to happen related to this risk, you're covered for it, so that someone else will be able to help you work through it. And that's what's great about insurance, is that, especially when it's the type of insurance that I'm thinking of for our professional insurance, and also another one I deal with in real estate is title insurance a lot. And they're great about, you say, here's my problem, and they'll take it on and they'll find a resolution for you. It can be expensive though, so that's the downside, and that would be part of your analysis as well. Or like I said, if you decide that it is not a big enough risk in terms of the reward that you would get from carrying on the way that you were hoping to, then you would be able to just basically write it off that, yeah, this is probably going to happen, but it's not as big of a deal as one of the bigger risks that we've eliminated. Okay, awesome. I think on to the next. Okay, so then carrying out the plan. So basically this is where you would put any processes into place that cover any of the legal risks. So for, let's say, an employee or someone that's working for you, I hesitate to use the word employee because I know we'll be talking about independent contractors and that sort of thing. So we'll just say someone who's working for you or providing you a service. Say they were to get hurt on the job or something like that, you want to make sure that you have a process in place for what that looks like. Something else that comes to mind, and this is something that we obviously have to confront. I'm not likely to have one of our employees get hurt at our business because it's just an office. Most people are sitting through most of the day, but something that's more likely is, say, a confidentiality breach. So we obviously handle sensitive information on a day-to-day basis. What if one of my employees was to go out to a bar and start spouting off all of this information about one of our clients? What happens then? So we want to make sure that there is a confidentiality policy in place, so that if that were to happen, that we have that to rely on if we need to terminate that employee or give a suspension or some sort of discipline. So that would also fall under accident reporting and that sort of thing. If you need a type of permit or license or anything like that to operate your business, then you would want to make sure that you definitely have that into place, and basically confront how you're going to get that if you haven't already, and have the procedure for that ready so that you're ready to go as soon as you're ready to start the business. So that could affect your ability to actually provide the service, or it could affect the place that you are providing the service from. And then this is something that you can loop a lawyer into as well, or any other type of expert. So I often say having a talk with an accountant about these types of things is a good idea as well, because they can make sure that your processes are correct. Same with your insurance agent. Make sure that you're asking for proper coverage from anyone that you're having a contract with, that you would include your insurance coverage in, and all of that sort of thing. And a lawyer can look at whether your processes are covering you the way that they should be. And even point out where gaps in your processes are. This is also something that even just asking an experienced business owner is very helpful with. I find that I've learned a lot about running a business just from working at my other jobs and just noticing how a successful business runs, and or where a non-successful business has its faults. So what have other people done wrong that we need to have a procedure in place in case that comes up. Okay. I think we can go to the next one. Okay. So this one, the legal structure. So we have a sole proprietorship, a partnership, a limited liability, and a corporation as the examples here. So you want to make sure that you have determined what the best fit for you is. If you are just operating a small business and you don't really see much room for growth, but you want some sort of business entity that any income that you have can flow through, or if you're not worried about much liability on your shoulders or anything like that, like if there isn't very much risk for you at all and you don't anticipate many taxes to be paid or anything like that, then a sole proprietorship is a great idea, especially since it means that you have the sole control over the company. It's cheaper to do a sole proprietorship than a corporation or a partnership. If it's just you and no employees, then they're really it would be the best case. I usually say to start out as a sole proprietorship or a partnership, and then once you start to grow a bit bigger, then become a corporation, unless there's a severe concern for you having any liability. So the main difference between all of these options is what level of liability you as your personal self, as an individual, have for your own company. So if you're a sole proprietorship, you take on the full liability. So that means that if you were to be sued by a customer or an employee or something like that, then they can go after your own personal assets. And that's scary for a lot of people. So that's why you want to have the kind of risk analysis here where you would be thinking, okay, my type of business, we're not dealing with a ton of money. So even if I did get sued and have to pay it out, I can cover that. That's okay. And same with if you have appropriate insurance coverage as well. A lot of the same types of considerations are involved for a partnership, except you're obviously dealing with more than one person in this case. A partnership basically would just be a sole proprietorship, but it's two people and you have a contract between the two of you of what your roles are. Sometimes there's one managing partner, which basically does all the day-to-day work, and then the other partner is just the investor or something like that, but they haven't reached the level of business where they would want to incorporate. The biggest thing here is for a corporation. Before someone incorporates, I always advise them to talk to an accountant first. There's a certain threshold that you would be having to meet basically to make it worth your while to have a corporation. And this is something that your accountant can tell you best. If you start asking me about taxes, I'm going to say I have no clue. I can hazard a guess. But
don't worry, we won't be doing that for you, Sarah.
Okay, good. So that's basically the biggest thing is any tax consequences for any of the three. I always say make sure it's worth your while to get a corporation. But if you're facing a lot of liability, it's a good idea to have a corporation because then it's separate. So as long as you don't put a personal guarantee on anything, so on a loan or anything like that, it's totally separate from you. It's considered a separate legal entity. So it can even own property. So your corporation can own property, but your business, your sole proprietorship can't, because then that would have to be in your own name. Same with if you are opening a bank account. The bank account is in your name operating as your business name, but your corporation can have its own bank account. So it is a separate legal entity. So if you were sued, your liability is limited. So you won't be personally responsible for anything that's been done. your personal assets won't be able to be attacked unless you personally guaranteed a loan, and that's just for the extent of the loan anyways. A limited liability company is kind of the in-between between a sole proprietorship or a partnership and a corporation. So it's basically a partnership. There's usually more than one person involved, a partnership or a sole proprietorship, but where your liability is limited to the amount that you have invested into the company. So it does kind of provide a little bit of both. There are some more hoops to jump through in terms of registering a limited liability company. I'm sorry, I haven't done one in a bit, so I can't think of them off the top of my head, but it is just a little bit more. Nothing too crazy though, just regular business plan stuff. So stuff that you would already have available, but it's just a little bit more detailed in order to actually register it. Whereas sole proprietorship is just the business name that you're registering. Okay. We can, are there any questions on the differentiation? I know you guys have already kind of gone through that. Okay.
So far.
Okay, perfect. And then we can go on to the next one, I think. So have the relevant licenses, permits, registrations been researched? So this will definitely fall into your municipal legislation and any like professional obligations in terms of whatever you're practicing. So whatever service you're providing with your business, whether you need a license for that, whether you need a permit for that. So I'm thinking what's coming to mind is if you are going to be selling alcohol, then you need to have a liquor license, that type of thing. So you basically can't just open the business and hope that you're able to do whatever, sell whatever you're offering or do whatever service you're offering. You have to make sure that you're actually allowed by law to do that, and that you're complying with any legislation that's out there. So that can be a whole number of things, and it really varies from the type of business to the type of business. Some don't have much if you're just producing your own product. If you're making jewelry or something like that, there's not too much that you need to consider. While it's small, when it gets bigger, then obviously there'd be more considerations. But if you are practicing as a dentist or something like that, then obviously those considerations increase. Or if you are handling food or alcohol or anything like that. Okay, so you definitely want to make sure that you have checked out your specific business and seen what it is that you need to do, which is something that a lawyer can do for you, or you can do yourself. A lot of the bylaws and permit information is online. Most municipalities are really good about that you can find it all yourself, or you can, pay a lawyer to find it for you. We can go on to the next one.
More for an accountant, I think, based on arrangements. So let's skip over that one.
Sounds good. Yep. Definitely think about taxes, though. I always say there could be tax consequences, but you need to find out what those will be.
And you said it brilliantly. Talk to an accountant when you're talking about the different business arrangements. Talk to a lawyer and talk to an accountant.
Yes. Basically, we call that your legal team, and it's the ideal situation is if we have all of us helping you, then it's perfect. And then we talked a lot about contracts already, but this is just kind of a list of what you need to consider. I've gone into quite a bit of detail about this already, so we can probably go on to the next one unless there's questions on it. One thing that I do want to mention on the contracts is that because I already explained how you can have a lawyer review them, or you can draft or have a lawyer draft them. When it is a good idea to have a lawyer at least look at it and provide comments, because then you have that stamp of approval that we are saying this contract is legally compliant. We are trained to think of things that you haven't thought of when creating the agreements. So you can find really good ones online or ones that someone else that you know are using, but there still might be some holes in it. So even just having someone look at it, even if I say this looks great, there's nothing wrong with it, then you have that stamp of approval that it's okay from us. So it's basically just saying, okay, it's legally compliant. have you ensured agreements are in writing and been reviewed by a respective lawyer? So basically what I was just saying, you just want to make sure that you do have them. I know a lot of clients of mine, they say that, oh, I've been meaning to get a contract in place, or they might have the business that they're operating is a property management company and they don't have leases for any of their tenants and things like that. Oh yeah, we've been meaning to get those into place. Well, if you've already been operating that way, then it's hard to go back to a customer or client and say, okay, I need a contract now. So they'll say, we can just continue on. And then that if trouble does arise, which we hope that it doesn't, but if it does, then that's when there's a problem. So you want to make sure that you get those right off the get-go, even if you just have a precedent. So if you have a standard form that you use for everybody, but has been reviewed by a lawyer, so that you're good to go. And then if someone presents you with a contract and says, I would like you, so the ideal example for this would be a lease. If a landlord approaches you and says, I want you to sign this lease, have a lawyer look at it too before you sign it. Don't sign anything until you've had someone look at it and make sure that it's okay. That's the best case scenario, because before you sign it, then we still have the wiggle room to negotiate things and make sure everything's in your favor. My job as your lawyer, so any lawyer's job as your lawyer, is to look at things through your lens. So to make sure that you are protected. So I'm not looking at it to make sure that it's fair. If someone throws something at me that I think is discriminatory to you or anything like that, you specifically, then I will say, I don't think this is fair. We need to amend it to this or take it out completely. So it's always in your perspective. It's your best interest that we're looking at. Okay, we can go on to the next one. Okay, so I talked quite a bit about this. You do want to make sure that your business name is registered. Number one, that's very important. Patents are something, intellectual property law is its own ballgame completely. So I can't provide you much guidance on the actual process of doing these things, but patents and trademarks and that sort of thing are really good ideas for anyone who has any sort of unique idea. So if you've created an invention, or if you have a really great logo that you put a lot of money and detail into making or anything like that, then you should investigate this. Anything that you are publishing publicly is considered to be your intellectual property. So if you have just published it, then you have a copyright over that. And you would have a claim against anyone who would be producing something that's substantially similar. Whether it's a complete copy or close, pretty close, then that would be a question for a judge to figure out, but you would have a claim against those people. So you want to make sure that you have whatever protections you can. So you might have the copyright to it just by publishing it, but going one step further to get a patent or a trademark or something like that is a really good idea to make sure that you're fully covering your bases. And it just makes it easier if a lawsuit were to occur. If you were to make a claim against someone, then you have that piece of paper, that trademark that said that you registered it, and you know for sure that you were the first person to use it. Okay. And same with confidential information. Everyone has trade secrets for their business. If you have employees coming in or anyone working for you, and you don't want them leaving and giving up any of your trade secrets, then you definitely should have a confidentiality agreement and possibly a non-competition agreement as well with them. And that can be included in their employment contract or their contractor agreement. So that's something to consider as well. Okay. Next slide. Okay, how have you classified your workers? So this is what I've been alluding to. Employees are independent contractors. So basically an employee, I don't know how much you guys know about this already, so I'll just kind of break it down, and sorry if I'm repeating stuff you already know. So employees are basically where the typical scenario where you think of someone where they are your employees, they're working for you to do this job. You are paying them a wage or a salary, and they come to work whenever they're scheduled and they do the work that you assign to them, all of that fun stuff. And they also have the benefits of unemployment insurance if they were to lose their job, vacation pay, any rights under the Employee Standards Act they would have. An independent contractor is someone that you hire to do a specific job for you. So the most common one I see in my field is we have clerks working for us, and more often than not, a clerk is just someone that works for us. They come in 9 to 5, they do their job the whole day. They are employees. We pay them an hourly salary or whatever the situation is there. We can have independent contractors for clerking, but what they would be getting paid for is each file they complete, they're getting paid for that, and they're not actually employed by us. So I can't really tell them what to do as long as they're providing the product that we have contracted them to do. And then they would get their fee based on whether they completed what I have asked them to do. Okay, but I can't give them the same, like I can't really punish them if they're acting out or anything like that, because they don't work for me. They're just an independent contractor. So it's a degree of separation. You can have your own business, but be an independent contractor to other people. So basically you're lending your services to someone else and they're paying you to do that service. Okay. Agents kind of fall in the middle, where it's someone that can sign off for you, and it can be an independent contractor or an employee, depending on what your agreement with them says. So I am Chelsea's employee. I work for Chelsea. I'm an employee of the company, but I would be considered her agent as well, because I can sign off on things and I can make business decisions for her because she's given me the ability to do so. So I am her agent as well. I can show up at one of her business meetings, like I can go to the bank and I can sign checks for her. So I'd be considered her agent in that respect.
So, question is, do you have insurance to mitigate your risk? We had a person slotted to do this presentation. Unfortunately, they could not attend. So I will do my best to cover all the dynamics required.
A business owner needs to be prepared in the event of a disaster. When accidents, injuries, negligence, theft, or other losses occur in a professional situation, the business and their owners can often be held liable for these losses. What does it mean to be liable? Liability is a legal responsibility to settle financial debts or obligations to those affected by a loss, typically in the form of a lawsuit, which can total amounts greater than the business is able to afford. Business insurance exists to help pay for these liabilities. Business insurance doesn't prevent disasters from happening. Rather, it is a proactive solution that protects you from liabilities once a disaster has occurred. Insurance prevents the cost of business mistakes from leading to complete financial ruin. This video will cover the primary types of business insurance to help you protect your assets and your business, as well as list some of the more specialized policies available. We will also share some agent resources to help you secure the perfect insurance policy for your small business. The term business insurance isn't actually a specific type of insurance policy. Rather, it is a term used to describe the types of insurance coverages designed for business owners and their companies. The specific policies and levels of coverage required will depend on the size and type of business you operate. You don't need to know all the details. A qualified agent will help determine where your liabilities lie and recommend appropriate policies. But every business owner should have a basic understanding of what coverages are available. Insurance is a standard cost of doing business and is relatively inexpensive compared to the potential impact of a lawsuit. Considering that the cost of a single claim can decimate a company, it's the smart thing to do. Let's take a look at 3 of the most common forms of small business insurance. The first is general liability insurance. General liability insurance is the most common type of business insurance, as it covers the most basic needs that are shared among all types of companies. Things like bodily injury on your business's property and physical damage caused by employees are covered by this policy. If you aren't sure which types of insurance your company needs, you should look here first. Bear in mind, general liability insurance does not cover employee injury, which brings us to the next common type of business insurance, workers' compensation insurance. Workers' compensation insurance, workers, or workman's comp for short, is meant to protect the interest of your employees if they are injured on the job. It can also protect your business from a lawsuit if that employee needs additional compensation for their injuries. If you have any employees, you'll likely need this coverage. Almost all states have laws requiring workers' compensation insurance. Thirdly, there is professional liability insurance. Also known as errors and omissions insurance, professional liability insurance is a policy that is meant to protect professionals in the workplace. Expert advice given to a client by you or your employees may not always lead to the desired result. If your guidance is deemed inaccurate, negligent, or fails to deliver agreed upon results, it can leave you open to liabilities if the client is financially damaged and blames your company. Professional liability insurance is essential protection for providers of professional or expert advice. Real estate agents, insurance agents, financial advisors, and other coaches and consultants can all benefit from this type of insurance. Aside from these foundational types of insurance coverages, there are also more specific policies available. They are typically specialized to match the unique needs of different businesses. Commercial auto and property insurance, which are similar to personal auto and homeowners insurance, but for professional vehicles and workplaces. These policies protect owners against damages arising from car accidents, fire, certain natural disasters, and so on. Business interruption insurance compensates your business a percentage of lost revenue in the case of a catastrophe and business shutdown. Product liability insurance covers physical or other harm to a customer that is caused by a product that you manufacture or sell. Home-based business insurance covers gaps in your homeowner's insurance policy if you run a business out of your home. And data breach insurance covers some of the damages in the event that your customer's digital data is breached or stolen. To simplify administration and save money, you can consolidate your coverages with a business owner's policy, also known as a BOP. A business owner's policy is a group of insurance policies tailor-made for small businesses. These packages typically include general liability, commercial property, and business interruption insurance, and can be customized to your business's specific needs. In conclusion, your business needs insurance. This fairly modest investment will protect both your business and personal assets from the inevitable liabilities that arise from mistakes and disasters.
So as you can see, this used to drive me nuts when I used to teach entrepreneurship at the college. I would look at my students' financial sheets, and I don't know how many times I saw the insurance line zeroed out. You need some form of insurance for your business. And I know Christine's thinking there, oh, I got to add that to the budget too. Yeah, it's really important that you look at your business, look at the risks associated with your business, as Sarah had acknowledged. And along with those risks, do they need insurance to be purchased in order to get coverage? And there's three main insurance related questions that have to be answered. What kind of insurance is needed for your business? How much coverage should you take out, and from whom to purchase the insurance? When it comes to the kind of insurance to purchase, obviously talk to an insurance agent. There is specialty insurance that you can get out there nowadays that isn't usually privy to other businesses, and it's just industry specific. For example, with if it's an innovative business, you can purchase media liability cover that protects intellectual property against theft. So if it's industry specific, there will be certain kinds of insurance that need to be applied to that industry. Obviously, talk to different insurance companies, and businesses similar to your own. You're not competing for insurance as to what they've taken out for their policies. And in order to decide who to purchase from, have a set list of criteria and questions that you'll be asking each insurance agent to make sure that you've covered all the prevalent questions and you have all the prevalent criteria to compare the different insurance coverages. And always have a chance, if you can, to look at the document before you sign it to make sure that your coverage has covered all the dynamics that you wanted for your business. Some general rules: don't risk more than you can afford to lose. If the loss is great, take out insurance on it. And a general rule of thumb is whoever bears the risk on that asset or that person, they will have to be the one to purchase the insurance. Number two, don't risk a lot for a little. Premium should be related to the potential loss and treated as savings or costs. purchase the largest deductible the business can afford. This can result in substantial premium savings. Number 3, insurance should only be taken out when absolutely necessary. Take preventative measures and build these losses into the cost or expense structure of the business. Number 4, purchase adequate coverage. Consider co-insurance clauses, and also please be brutally honest and give them full disclosure of all the dynamics, because coverage could be at risk if you have hid any of the aspects that might impact the coverage. Number 5, adequately investigate the insurance company and the agent associated with it. And number 6, periodically double check to ensure that coverage is current and that you've gotten all the prevalent dynamics covered as well. So what types of different insurance is there? I don't need to talk on all of these because not all of these are prevalent to you. For example, if you're not a corporation, directors and officers insurance will not be applicable to you. Directors, officers, or key player insurance is only applicable to those that have a corporation or for professional organizations as well. It also helps provide coverage for any alleged claims for wrongful decision-making of those directors or officers. Professional liability insurance also would be similar to the errors and omissions insurance that was spoken on in the video. So you cannot be sued for misrepresentation or misinformation. They have this insurance coverage if you gave bad information. Commercial general liability insurance is out there for the business itself, any stakeholders that are around. Product liability insurance is for any of the customers that are out there that might get injured as a result of using your products. Cyber risk and data breach insurance, very important. Now, business confidential information is one of those intellectual properties that cannot be protected as registered, like patents or copyrights or industrial designs, for example. But it can be protected with appropriate physical and data measures to protect that confidential information. And in case it ever got breached, there's insurance to be taken out for that. It can cover out anything that occurs during a cyber theft, so any cost or damage. It also covers any general data protection regulation penalties. It protects against data protection lines. It also factors in a legal and compensation clause or cost. And extortion and system rectification costs. So let's say somebody hacked into a hospital, for example, and seized all their data and locked out their systems. This is something that is very significantly serious. Commercial property insurance is for anyone that is on your property. Sarah could have touched on this. There's different classifications of people who will approach your property. There's those who are there for your economic benefit. There are like customers, for example. There are those people that you don't care are there, but you don't necessarily want to trespass them either. And this could be somebody that's maybe walking across your brick and mortar sidewalk briefly. They're not coming to purchase at your business. They're just merely passing through. And then there's trespassers. Trespassers are still owed a duty of care, and commercial property insurance will cover that. Commercial auto insurance will cover anyone that's using your commercial vehicles. Business interruption insurance is great for things like, let's say there was a data breach, or let's say there was a theft to your business, your POS systems were broken down, you needed IT to come out, they couldn't come out for 3 days, so you cannot operate your business for those 3 days. That would be a situation where business interruption insurance would be used. Crime insurance for theft as well. Workplace safety insurance is out there too. You should have workers' compensation on employees. This is a legal requirement, not just if you want it, it is a legal requirement. You have to have workers' compensation insurance on your employees. And there's the possibility of group insurance. Now, small business, it can be rather expensive, but if you are a Chamber of Commerce member, there is chamber benefits that you can jump into on insurance and have health benefits for your business as well. You can contact me outside of this and I can provide you with more information about that. So The questions to essentially see if you have enough insurance coverage. What does your business do? And what does the industry typically do for insurance? Do you work with your hands to build, install, or fix things? If you do, then you should also consider a succession plan outside of insurance. What happens if you are sick or if you get injured on the job? Let's say a parent of yours becomes ill or injured. You have to take some time off to be with them. Consider a succession plan now, not for when things hit the fan, if you know what I mean. But you can have insurance for that as well. Do you provide consulting services? That would consider the level of insurance you need. Do you sell products in a store or do you sell products online? What type of products do you sell? Do you manufacture products? Do you need to travel to deliver your products or service? Do you need commercial vehicles to operate your business? Do you have any employees and how many? And do you handle or maintain records of sensitive client information? And remember, when you're doing this, you need to consider PIPEDA as well. So if there's cyber insurance on there, PIPEDA will be taken into consideration with the application of that insurance. But again, talk to a commercial business insurance person so they can assess what your needs are. Is where your business located relatively safe? Do employees have all the protective measures in place to work safely? Could products have been more safety measures built in? Are processes in place to mitigate mistakes that could cause any physical or financial harm? And does the company rely on a single employee for a critical process? So this would help rectify any risk your business needs too. You should also take an inventory of what the business assets are in your insurance as well. What is the owned property and its market price associated with it? What is the inventory of company vehicles? And personal vehicles do not count. What are your digital assets? Digital assets are anything that's intangible intellectual property that brings profits in for the business. So this could be a patent. This could be a industrial design. It could be a trademark or a trade name or a URL address. It could be a copyright or a it's escaping me right now, but those are what are considered digital assets. These will bring value to the business too and could be sold along with the business. Any product inventory that is out there, this is dollars that is sitting in a warehouse. Any tools or equipment, any office furniture, intellectual property goes along with digital assets. Confidential information of clients is considered very valuable as well and needs to be protected too. When you apply for insurance, you will need to have all this information available for your insurance agent. You need to have the business address of all the branches of your businesses, the age of your office of building if it's applicable, how many employees do you employ, what is your total payroll, what is your gross sales for the previous year, what is the list of business assets. Sometimes these are ranked oldest to newest, sometimes they're ranked most expensive to the cheapest. That is up to the business itself. And actually, intellectual property could be ranked the same. Sometimes the risk assessment will rank it based on frequency of violation or the potential of it becoming infringed. Sometimes they rank it based on the expense of how much it costs the business. That will be up to the insurance agent and the business. List the tools and equipment and office furniture, any business bank account and credit information. Any proof of company vehicle ownership, the company make, model, and identification number, just in case it gets stolen. Driver's license of anyone driving the company vehicles, those should be on file. Any health and safety policy documents, even processes, employee processes should be considered in that element as well. Professional certificates and any existing insurance policies if you're switching providers. For the staff, you should have their name, addresses, dependents, an emergency contact, very, very important, their birth date, and possible social insurance numbers or a health card number as well on file. Again, these would stay in confidential files away from prying eyes. What's left of your business plan? Well, We're going to take all those meat and potatoes that you've done. So earlier on, I gave you worksheets and modules to work on. There is an overall business outline. It's available on our website as well. All you'll have to do now is copy and paste from those documents, because you didn't handwrite it. You typed it all like I suggested to you all. And now you're going to put it into our overall template. We need to put in a cover page. We need to put together a table of contents. We need to finish an executive summary, which is done very last. Even though it's the second document or page in the document, a lot of people are like, oh, I'll start my, no. Your executive summary is a highlight. It's done very last. And what appendices need to be included. Now, before I go back, let's talk about the cover page. With your cover page, guys, wow us. I want to see something nice. So if you have a logo, throw your logo up there along with all the pertinent information, and put a date on there as well, because it's a living and breathing document. So you're going to want to see the different versions and how your business evolved over the time as well. When you're preparing the table of contents, format your document first, then go back and do this, because it can be a headache. I have had times where I've pulled my hair out screaming because the formatting didn't go. So do all your formatting for your document. It will change the alters of the numbers, but make sure and double check that the pages are all numbered within the body of the document and they cross-reference correctly with the actual title page itself. You want to be able to speak to them. The table and content should be so clear that if they don't want to read the body of the document, they only want to get certain aspects out, that they should be able to jump through this. So I tell my clients, please don't put the business market description right after the business description. Put it on a whole separate page. Make it look like a fresh idea, a fresh look, and make sure those page numbers coincide with those as well. Your executive summary is done very last. Think of your executive summary like your movie trailer. You're really excited for this movie coming up. There's been a lot of pump up about it. And you watch that 1 to 2 minutes, sometimes 30 seconds if it's TV, to see how excited, how captivating it has you, to see whether you're going to part yourself with your hard-earned dollar to watch this movie. And it's really frustrating too, when sometimes you get only the best aspects of that movie in that mini trailer. But your mini trailer is like your elevator pitch. This is what is going to wow the audience to get them convinced and continuing to read your document. So this is the document. This is the page that provides a short summary of all the highlights of your plan to the reader. In your executive summary, you should have the following: a mission statement. What is the type of business that you do? A general expression of the direction your business hopes to go in. You also want to talk about how you identified the market, the environment, and the strengths and why you're going into this business. The other aspect you want to mention is any highlights of profits you might experience, or if you are looking for money, any funding requirements, just the high level stuff. Okay, so this is what your business plan is. Spend a little time too briefly on talking about how this idea originated, but your executive summary shouldn't go beyond 2 paragraphs and 1 page. So with your executive summary, can the business concept be summarized after reading only the executive summary? Well, a lot of people understand what the gist of the document is just by reading that 1 page. Is it right to the point? And will that make you want to read more? Have another person read your executive summary. See what they say. Be open to criticism as well. Now, what's left finally is the very end, the appendices. The appendices is all the extras. If anyone wants to reference that at the back of the document, they can. They don't have to go filing through the document itself in order to get this content, because they might not find it important. This is a great spot to put any charts, graphs, or tables that supplement any data from within your document, any agreements or sample contracts that you have, any license permits, patents, and trademark documentation, any product illustrations or product packaging samples, any marketing materials like ad jingles you might do, or a newsprint sample, or maybe a Facebook strategy, any resumes from each of your executive team members, contracts and supporting documents for anything else, building permit and equipment lease documentation, any professional organization, key team player contact information, credit history, and detailed market studies. With your primary research, this is where you're going to want to put your sample survey that you did for the primary research for the actual business plan itself. Okay, so that is for the appendices. So we will have all of these sections covered after this evening.